Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Loesekrug-Pietri. Why are we doing this? Why are we setting up the equivalent in Europe to the European DARPA? I don't want to be too negative here this afternoon in beautiful Paris, but because the situation is actually pretty dire. Do you know this man? Who does not know this man? Well, this man is going to play a very important role in an upcoming European election. He played a massive role in the election of Donald Trump. His name is Stephen Bannon. And basically, he's using technology massively to disrupt what is at the core of Europe, which is the democratic system and our values. And look at what's happening. Right now, we have our elections being hacked by cyber attacks. We have fake news and social media, and think about it really carefully, how much it is destroying the basis of our democracy, which is the debate. If nobody trusts each other, it's going to be increasingly difficult for our democracies to survive. And we could see that in the last weeks in France. Social contracts, I mean this famous social contract between the state and the individual. When you go to China right now, facial recognition is completely changing this contract and changing the relationship between the state and the individual. And obviously, when we look at economic performance, which is also the core of the prosperity and of the contract between the state and the citizen, we can say that we are not necessarily in a good shape in Europe. And let's face it, I mean, we can say we are the best, and I know the Paris ecosystem, the French ecosystem, the European ecosystem is doing great, and you heard a lot of inspirational speeches today. But when you look at the facts, the situation regarding European technology does not look good. When you look at the right side, this is the top 10 companies in the world. None of them are European. But what is much more scary is that 7 out of the 10 are tech companies. That means our future, the future of your children, the future of our prosperity, the future of our societies is more and more driven by tech. That's the picture. And when you look at the video on the left side, it means the way forward, you see that for something like AI, like artificial intelligence, Europe is only investing a very, very, very small part of what China and the US are investing. And remember, in the 14% of the rest of the world, you have Israel, Singapore, Korea, Japan, Russia. So massive players in the AI field. So do we want to be the European that is using Google Translate, that is driving Tesla, that is using Netflix for its... Of course, it's always dangerous to have this kind of language because you feel, oh my God, this guy is a nationalist. No, but that is really what is going to shape our world and our lives in 2020, 2030, and maybe in 2084. And let's face it, some massive challenges like climate change, Europe has not been able to tackle them. I mean, in 2015 here in Paris, we had an immense hope that especially Europe and France and Europe could be at the forefront. Right now, unfortunately, countries like France or Germany are actually the worst player in OECD as far as carbon emissions is concerned. When you look at a fair society, which we all strive for, we don't strive for egalitarianism, but we look for a fair society. I don't know if you know this champagne bottle, this champagne glass, but basically the top red is what the top 20% of a society in developed countries own. And the 80% of the population only has this tiny piece of wealth. If we don't do that better, it's not only yellow vests, we're going to have pink vests, red vests, blue vests, and our societies are going to be destroyed. So you're asking yourself, why am I telling you that in an innovation forum, an event like Medi Keynote? Simply because innovation and technology is at the core of what is going to happen in the next years, and obviously looking forward to 2084. Let me give you some example how much we can maybe change the status quo. We believe, and this is the purpose of this agency, that we as Europeans do not tech for tech. I was an entrepreneur myself, then I was a VC, then I turn to government. If it's tech without a purpose, the French would say science sans conscience, there is nothing to get out of it. We will have the little elite very excited about it, but most of the population will be very worried. If we can show that we can replace pesticide with innovation, that we can massively improve healthcare with maybe AI, that we can do a human-centric digital transition, that we're not replaced by augmented by robots or AI, and that we can still look for new frontiers. For us, the new frontiers is space and oceans. Then we can bring the whole society behind us, and this is really what we aim for. This sounds like a very negative slide. We think, okay, the war is over. And when you look at these market shares, you could say, maybe it's the case. Actually, it's the opposite. We live in a world where increasingly it's the number one, the disruptor, the winner who takes all the market share. But this should be a message of hope for the Europeans, because basically it says that if we change the name of the game, if we're really inventing the next big thing, then we can change it, and we can maybe change the situation in retail, in search, or in social media. So it's up to us, and it's a question of methodology. This is a very difficult slide and a little bit technical, but basically, the US DARPA, which was at the core of a lot of inventions that the US developed in the last 60 years. Think about internet, that was called DARPANet initially. Think about the GPS. Think about the first autonomous car, that was a DARPA challenge. For all of you who have an iPhone and who use Siri, Siri was a DARPA invention. And it's not a question of money. DARPA invested in 60 years the equivalent of $60 billion in current terms. The European Union invested $85 billion in the last 7 years. I don't want to talk badly about the European Union because I'm a fond European. But what I want to say, it's really a question of methodology. And look what we do today. Today, we decide slowly. We spend money on thousands of projects. Where are the priorities? We are not able to stop projects. And for those of you who are entrepreneurs, you know that speed, even more than money, is today the name of the game. So we need to do exactly the opposite. We need to decide very fast. We need to be bold, to think about the grand challenges. We should not have deep tech startups go from 100,000 to 200,000 euro and transform themselves into bounty hunters. We need to be able to back the innovators who can do it, but also to be very demanding. So if they don't deliver, we should be able to stop and redirect the project. And that's what the entrepreneur do on a daily basis. Try, experiment, fail fast if possible, and then succeed. And this is what really J.E.D.I is about, is we want to fill a gap. We have the impression today that on one side you have fundamental research, of which the alpha and omega is to do a research paper, but who is investing in a research paper? Nobody. And on the other side, you have applied research, but which is very, I would say, concentrated on today, tomorrow, and maybe the day after tomorrow. And that's what I like about this conference, is we're not just thinking about the next 6 months, but we're thinking really way ahead. And what we want is to bridge this gap. Do disruptive technology, but bring it to a prototype level that then the VCs, the entrepreneurs, the big industry, and I know there are a lot of corporates in this room, can scale at the right level. But once we have de-risked the part that this is important. So really, J.E.D.I is going to focus on everything which is too risky or too long-term for the private sector. But innovation is not everything. What we need is to bring the hearts and the souls. And I come back to my initial slide, and without sounding too dramatic, it's really the future of our democracies which are at stake. These are 2 cover pages of Time magazine in the last couple of weeks. We really need to ask ourselves. I mean, there was this dream, and I also had this dream, that the world would converge to similar values. Unfortunately, what we see right now is that increasingly you have values who are diverging from what is important for us. Human rights, individual rights, privacy. We see increasingly that there is a battle, especially between China and the US, where Europe is completely absent. There is a famous Chinese, I don't want to quote him because I think he has been way too much quoted, but saying that AI has two sides, a US and a Chinese side, and that Europe does not exist. Is it really what we want? Do we want a state that is going to do everything for us, that is going to score us, that is going to use technology to not transform ourselves into an Orwellian state? It's actually worse than that, into a brave new world where we are going to self-censor ourselves? I personally don't want that, and I don't think a lot of you do want. And on the other side, do we want to see what Donald Trump has been achieving in 2 years, which is remarkable in some way, is to undermine the fundament of our democracies? We don't want that. So we need to reload. We need to think differently. And let me give you a few examples of how we need to think differently linked to innovation. You probably know this is something happening in the big industry circle right now. There's a merger going on. I have no interest in that. But what I want to convey as a message is I think a lot of our policymakers are still living in the 20th century. It's not a question of market share, which is important. When Google bought DeepMind, you know DeepMind is this UK company which developed AlphaGo and AlphaGo Zero that beat the most famous Go player. DeepMind was $26 million revenue, so very little market share. But they bought with DeepMind probably the best talent in AI that was existing. If you think about a monopoly being built, then this was much more monopoly going on and building some kind of a unattackable competitor than looking at relatively old-fashioned industry like railway. But that is something that very few policymakers understand, and it's very important for you, wherever you are, that you make sure that this message is well understood. Other thing that we need to upload is the way we take decisions. Have you not been sometimes frustrated how decisions are made based on very little data, very little information? A lot, again, of our policymakers rely a lot on polls, les sondages, which always gives a very late picture of the society. And why is this increasingly dangerous? Because this is the world in which we are living. In 2012, we had 3 zettabytes of information all over the planet. Videos, pictures, databases, etc. In 2018, just now, we had at 22. In 2 years, this will have doubled again, which means that we have really reached this singularity point where basically it's impossible for policymakers, entrepreneurs, individuals to really understand the wealth of information, the emails they get, the news channel they get every day. So we need to use technology to help us understand the world in which we are. And I think today, if there's really one world that needs to be disrupted massively, it's the political world, which is still relying on very old-fashioned way of understanding the society. This is an incredible opportunity to create businesses, to create GovTech, to create social enterprises. But this is important because if we want our system to survive, our democracies to survive, these democracies need to live with their time. If they are not, they will die because they will be attacked from all sides. Third thing, empowerment. We all feel that. Does it make sense to vote every 5 years? For some decisions, it's probably too short term. If you think education, if you think infrastructure, we should give leaders maybe more time to deliver. On the other side, when you think about more short-term issues like security, like innovation, then probably 5 years is way too long. How come we have not been able to reinvent with technology, maybe with distributed ledgers, the way that we empower societies? Maybe we are not the best ones to judge on education. So maybe we should give our vote for some themes to our friends who are much more educated on that. Maybe on some other topics we are more. So we need to find a way where we can differentiate. Otherwise, and you probably all experience that, the principle of one man and one woman and one vote will be increasingly put in question. And what we see both in China as well as in the US is a little bit this tendency, and unfortunately in some European countries, of saying, we should not give votes to everybody, they don't understand what we say. And we saw that, especially in France, in the last couple of weeks and months. And I think the response to that has been way too traditional. And this is also an opportunity for us. If we're able to reinvent with innovation and technology the way our democracies work, then probably we can sustain it for the next 50 years. And last but not least, this is really an appeal to you, is the way we see our own engagement. I was very happy to see how much crowdfunding effort is done, and I'm very happy to share with you that one of the grand challenges that J.E.D.I will launch will not just rely on public funding, it will also be crowdfunding from the general public. I can give you a little bit of scoop. We're going to launch a grand challenge on replacing pesticides. This is not digital, but this is really core to innovation. We all know that pesticides potentially have a massive impact on our food, on our children, and definitely on our future. But for the moment, very little is done to find a solution to this. And we think this is something where not just the state, not just a small elite, but probably the whole population can gather behind it and say, let's use innovation to find a positive solution, a future that we are looking for. So I'm very, very impatient for those of you who want to join us. Today, J.E.D.I is 3,000 innovation leaders all over Europe, research agencies, CEOs of startups, of deep tech startups, large corporations. And what we focus our time on is identify what are the grand challenges that technology can help to solve some big societal issues. And this is where we need your input, we need your ideas, we need your enthusiasm, we need also your response, because the idea of J.E.D.I is to make sure that everybody can participate, small, big, known, unknown. And I'm very, very encouraged by the attendance today. So thank you very much for this, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you.